Hello and welcome to From Field to Skin, a series of interviews chronicling Ash Alberg's adventures in the Canadian fibre shed. Our third episode features Hannah Lee from Hinterland and was recorded in February 2018 via Gmail chats between Treaty 1 territory in Manitoba and Vancouver Island. You can find Hannah Lee online at hinterland_textiles on Instagram or visit hinterlandfarm.ca. For more, follow at From Field to Skin on Instagram or visit fromfieldtoskin.com. Welcome, and I've got Hannah Lee from Hinterland Textiles here with me. And by with me, I mean I'm currently sitting on my couch in Winnipeg, and Hannah Lee, where are you sitting right now?
I'm on my couch in Victoria.
There we go. I love this whole coast to coast thing. I'm not actually on a coast, I just pretend I'm on a coast. So you run Hinterland Textiles. So tell us a bit about that and about your personal fiber journey so far.
Okay. Well, I started Hinterland, I think about maybe 5 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer. And I just started with a small group of alpacas. And I didn't start actually making yarn until I think about probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I kind of experimented at first with the yarn, different combinations of sheep and my alpaca. And now I work with a farmer in southern Alberta to get Rambouillet wool, and with Custom Woolen Mill, and they do the spinning and blending and everything else.
Nice.
But yeah, it started as really just a small operation with, a handful of alpacas, and, slowly accumulated more over the years and still accumulate more every few months, it seems. But a big part of it was started by just different rescues, and my husband and I work with the shelter quite a bit.
Oh, cool.
And like shearing and whatnot when they need help. So we've taken a lot of animals through the different rescues and livestock rescue. You never really thought that it was a thing until you're doing it. So
that's super cool. And so at this point, your yarns, you've got, is it 6 or 7 different colors, and it's all from the natural fleece colors, right?
I think I only have 5. I have 6. Yeah. I have 6, and I have the range, which is the 2-ply. It's kind of somewhere between a worsted and an Aran weight.
Yeah.
And I have the watershed yarn, which is a thicker, I think chunky. Like, I always get mixed up with chunky and bulky, but it's knits at about 13 stitches over 10 centimeters.
Cool.
And then I'm coming out with a fingering weight.
I'm so excited.
That'll be here like probably this week sometime.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is not going to come out until after you've debuted it, but I am making a little note to myself. I've been thinking about the fact that I want another fingering weight cardigan in my life, and so that's perfect. So I'm going to grab some yarn from you.
I know, I can't wait to see it. I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, so I'm knitting with range right now. I think I've got smoke. I'm pretty sure that's the color I've got. Yeah. And it's just like, it's so cozy and squishy and perfect. And so I guess the reason that you mix with the sheep wool is because alpaca has like no structure on its own, right?
Yeah, well, I wanted a garment yarn.
Yeah.
So alpaca doesn't really do that on its own. Like, it's got a lot of drape.
Yeah.
It grows and grows and grows. Like, it's great for like a blanket or a scarf or a shawl or something like that. But to knit sweaters and hats and mittens and whatnot, like, I wanted something with more memory and structure. So I started researching different wools, and I actually started blending with a Cordale,
Oh, okay.
That was originally what I with Cordale, and then like a few other blends from the mill
Hmm.
that they were getting, and then I started getting just the doing 50-50 alpaca and merino,
Hmm.
Rambule merino.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it makes a very lovely yarn, I can say from experience.
Yeah, it's so much. I really really love it. I was with the fingering weight is actually 30% alpaca, 70% Rambule.
Oh, cool. So it's going to have even
I
more
think
structure.
yeah, I think so. And one thing I love about the Rambule is just how like bouncy and squishy it is.
Hmm.
Like when you block my yarn, it's like it just opens up and like fills in. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen, and I think that's because it's woolen spun.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's kind of woolen spun is like definitely more a squishier yarn,
Yeah.
but there are downsides to it, like it does pill over time, and like not it doesn't it's not as strong as worsted spun yarn.
Right. So you have to be a little bit more careful with the way that you're taking care of it. But I mean, it's,
Yeah, but it's I still prefer it because has it has that kind of halo, that like fuzzy halo.
hmm,
Yeah, that's kind of a woolen characteristic as well.
yeah,
But
love
yeah.
it. So how long have you been knitting then? Like, what was the reason that you were like, I want to make yarn?
Well, I didn't actually start knitting that long ago.
Really?
Um, yeah, probably like um, well, I learned how to knit when I was a kid, but I never
Yeah,
actually continued with it.
yeah.
And I didn't pick it up until um, gosh, I bet like maybe 7 years ago or so.
So like not very long before you started collecting
No,
alpacas. That's amazing.
not at all. And then so I was really into right away. I was really into yarns that had a story. So
Hmm.
like I loved buying yarn from small farms, like at markets and whatnot, or
Hmm.
um, but I didn't really know like anything about yardage, like how much I needed for a thing, or
Yeah,
so I had like in my stash, I still have like a whole bunch of like single skeins of who knows what.
totally.
I
Like,
don't know. I'll do something with it one day.
just weave a massive blanket.
Totally. So yeah, it was just something that I really loved. It was like part of that story was, seeing the animal that it came from, and um yeah, it's a really special thing to be able to have animals and see their fiber,
Hmm.
know what you're feeding them, and what like because it really does affect the fiber so much. Like if you
Yeah.
because I've bought fleece from other farms in order to make up the mill minimums that I need
Hmm.
in weights. Every year I have to buy quite a bit from a series of other farms,
Hmm.
and I have noticed, the drastic differences between animals that are just pasture raised
Hmm.
and animals that have hay supplemented all the time and really good quality hay.
Hmm.
And it's mostly that. Like I do feed a bit of grain, but mostly just for treats.
Yeah.
But but it really does make a huge difference.
Well, so I
So
guess
I guess
like the
like
land management must be really important then. So what do
what
you guys are in
weather
Victoria? So
is so.
did the alpaca just hang out in your backyard or?
No, we lease a property out in an area called Central Saanich, which is just 15 minutes from our house. It's really close.
Oh, nice.
And it's not very big. I think our animals have about 4 acres or so, maybe 3 acres.
Hmm.
And we do have them all fenced into small fields.
Yeah.
Right now, they're not on the grass at all. They're just on hay because it's frozen, and
Yes.
it's not good for them to eat frozen grass, anyways.
Hmm.
But so they're off the field basically from when the fields start getting really mucky and nasty.
Hmm.
So November, say,
Hmm.
until they'll probably go on in I'd say like April,
Uh-huh.
like right before we shear.
Okay.
Okay.
And do you
And
shear once a
there
year
was
or more often?
no more. Oh, you just cut out there.
Oops, sorry. Do you shear once a year or more often?
Oh, yeah, once a year. We shear in May every year.
Okay.
We shear the llama usually at the end of April, and then the alpaca boys in May.
Is the llama a guardian llama?
Yeah, but he's mostly just a bit of a grouch. He's not much of a guard. He's so old now. He's like, 23 or something like that.
Oh, wow. So he just kind of glares the coyotes into
Yeah.
submission.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. So you're part of, is it the Sunshine Coast Fiber Shed? Is that what your regional fiber shed would be?
No, I think it's Vancouver Island because I
Oh,
actually
right.
did look it up before our conversation, and I think I'm just gonna double check.
Because BC has quite a few fiber sheds, which I think is super cool. Um,
Yeah, it is Vancouver Island,
cool.
but I guess I could be part of the Sunshine Coast one. It's close enough.
Yeah. So what does then, like, it seems like your fiber story has pretty much always involved your fiber shed, whether you were consciously doing that or not.
I
Um,
think so. Yeah, it's something that I loved. Well, actually, I guess that was why I got animals in the
mhm,
first place was because I wanted to have to be, I loved the stories behind yarns
mhm,
and would buy, I was always like the, 100% wool kind of knitter.
mhm,
And when I was starting to look at animals, I was originally going to buy some sheep.
mhm,
Um, and then I came across an alpaca they were selling for basically the same price as sheep,
mhm,
and alpacas are normally like quite expensive.
mhm.
So and it was a retirement sale, and all of the alpacas were just like yearlings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
They're like, we're gonna have a bunch of new alpacas and then we're done.
yeah. So I ended up getting six of them.
Nice.
At first, that was me, and it was I leased some property, um, you know, in the area and put them there and just like learn how to look after them. And I grew up with horses, so I was like
Okay.
somewhat familiar with looking after livestock animals.
Okay. That's good.
Although now, knowing alpacas, they're very different than horses.
Right.
But main note is that they eat so much less than horses.
Oh, yeah, I guess they're still like, I guess they're like half the size of a horse.
Oh yeah, they're tiny, and they just like I think because they're a camel relative,
Oh, they don't need to eat
they
very
they
much.
eat very little. They drink very little water. Like it's always there for them, but
That's convenient.
yeah, amazing. So
uh,
especially if they're in the field as well.
yeah, that's true. So like, what do you think then? Why? Because for you, it was like, it seems like it was pretty easy to engage with your fiber shed, whether you were consciously doing it or not. And from what I've heard from other folks who have lived in BC, there's a lot that's available there, but people just don't necessarily always go out and search for it, which is maybe like a Vancouver versus everywhere else in BC thing. Like, you don't leave the city, and so you don't find stuff necessarily. But what do you think stops people from engaging with the fiber shed, especially where like BC seems to have multiple fiber shed organizations running. There's lots of farms. There's lots of people who are in like working on the production side of the fiber shed. So, I mean, with the number of designers, especially, there's definitely like people are starting to use fiber shed yarns more. I'm seeing, especially like your yarns, I'm seeing featured quite a bit. But what do you think stopped people before and is still stopping people from engaging with fiber shed?
Um, if I was going to take a guess, I would say first it would probably be maybe awareness and habit. Like people
Mhm.
probably, knitters and weavers that maybe are used to knitting with, maybe imported yarns. And because, like,
Mhm.
even 10 years ago, the trend was more like buying something from Europe was, more luxurious, and
Right.
like it had a lot of, and even when I started knitting, I loved like some of the Rowan yarns. Like they're beautiful
Right. Yeah.
yarns, and all of them are, you know, wool and alpaca and mohair. Like they're all natural fibers,
Yeah.
but it's, um, and I think now the trend is kind of turned a little bit, that people are looking for supporting local and supporting Canadians. So I think that it is shifting, but I
Mhm.
would say like probably the reason why maybe people did not haven't haven't been engaging is maybe just, um, habit, and then also awareness, and then maybe not really sure how to reach out, or
Yeah.
maybe even like local yarn shops carrying brands. Like even for me, like I can't really do wholesale to yarn shops because I just don't produce enough. So I would
Right.
assume that people, small farm yarns are probably in the same boat. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't really make a lot of sense to wholesale. So then you end up having to do a lot of that marketing yourself.
Hmm.
So without really making an effort to put yourself out there, and like for me, what I did wholesale the first year and a half, I think,
Hmm.
and for me, the reason why I did it was to gain exposure.
Right.
But then at the same time, I was working with, reaching out to designers, and working with people, and sending my yarn to blogs, and anything I could
Right.
think of. So I was really trying to, um, get out there and have people start to recognize the brand.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge part of it, because if you're a small farm, brand, and you're just selling at markets in your local area, um, you can only go, like if I was just relying on the Victoria market, there's no way I would have a viable business.
Yeah. Totally.
So I really had to embrace that push
Yeah.
to try and sell, and try and have people in like Nova Scotia know who I was, and
Right.
across Canada, and into the United States and in Europe. Like I was just sending yarn everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like it's worked, but like I didn't even think of just hearing you talk about how much legwork you had to do in terms of just getting people to know what your stuff is, and to the point where it's like how designers will like try and find podcasters or try and find bloggers who will talk about a pattern, like to have somebody who's doing the same kind of thing for your yarn, and then on top of that you're also having to take care of your animals and do all of the production side of it as well. Like that, I can completely understand um why, like if you're a meat farmer, why you just wouldn't even bother, and then if you're a smaller hobby farm, why it becomes really difficult to get that wider exposure, especially if you have no business or marketing background like that.
Mhm.
There's lots of tools out there now that people can be using, but you still need to know how to use them, and you still need to be, comfortable with technology and comfortable with all the different ways that people are going to be able to get in touch with you and know what those different platforms are. Um, and if you're dealing with like crappy rural uh, cell service or internet service, then that just adds an extra barrier on top of
Mhm. Totally.
that.
Yeah. So I would say like, if I was going to guess why people maybe don't engage as often, is probably because they don't know it's there.
Hmm.
Um, and then because if you're not putting your thing in front of people all the time,
Yeah.
they're gonna forget it, or
Yeah.
you know not see it the time that they're there.
Yeah.
And
That's.
I personally just had a different, strategy.
Hmm.
um, and I don't do markets other than Knit City in Vancouver. Well, I don't even. It's kind of more like a trade show in a way.
Yeah. Totally.
But I don't do like farm markets or anything like that.
Hmm.
But that was just like my own. I had a different, strategy plan for my business, and
Hmm.
that's kind of where I went with it. Like I wanted to work with designers, and because if you look at a brand like Brooklyn Tweed, like they really paved the road for a lot of small farm yarns. They came out of the gates as a local or a American made, American spun yarn. It was amazing. They and to a lot of people, their yarn was kind of like, oh, it's kind of woolly and scratchy. It's like, well, yeah, that's because it's from a sheep.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. It hasn't
it's
had
like not acrylic.
yeah, exactly. It hasn't had everything stripped from it because it's been coated in plastic.
Yeah. So, and a huge part, I would say, the biggest part of how they did so well sales wise or have done so well sales wise is they release amazing patterns all the time.
Yeah, that's
And that,
totally true.
and that was a big part of um, my marketing plan, if you want to call it that,
Hmm.
was to work with designers and people that I felt would, also cared about uh, their own fiber sheds and in their communities. Like one of the first people I worked with was Angia Mowry.
Yes.
I can't remember her Instagram account. Dre,
I never know how to say it. Renee,
something is that something
something
like
this.
that.
I will link to it. Everybody knows who she is anyway. So
Yeah. So and she did the range shawl.
right, I forgot that that
And
was her.
that Yeah, so that was one of my first patterns, and it sold so well, and that was like in a way solidified for me. It was like, okay, this is definitely how I got to do this.
Yeah,
Like reaching out to people that working with people, and then like the amazing part was is just people started designing things with my yarn, and I'm like, oh man, like
I didn't even have to ask them.
yeah, like I didn't even a lot of people I didn't maybe know of right away, or
Hmm.
actually that did happen with do you know who Junko Okamoto is in Japan?
Yes, I've seen. She does beautiful designs.
Her stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who she was until like this one day I made like tons of sales, all the exact same, like, you know, 3 skeins of ash, 1 skein of maple, and 2 skeins of honey. And it was the acorn sweater.
Okay.
I just have to move because my computer is about to die.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully our internet doesn't go all funky again. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then after that I was like, something's, obviously someone's released a pattern out there in the world. So then I went on Instagram and like started searching and then found her. I was like, oh my gosh, this sweater is amazing.
Yeah.
And who knows how she found out about my yarn, but
Yeah,
it's
especially where
something.
she's like in Japan. Like,
Yeah, and I do
cool.
have quite a few customers in Japan. So,
Cool.
but I don't really. I don't know, and I looked through my orders, and I'm like, oh, sure enough, she had placed an order, a few months before, and
Yeah.
but it was just kind of cool. It was like, holy smokes! So stuff like that has happened where it's been kind of like you know a great coincidence or collaboration without even knowing.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
so the kits, like is it that sometimes you organize kits with people and then sometimes you like just it happens that somebody uses your yarn and so you just like
Yeah,
sell out of the yarn?
yeah. Like, well, I was doing for a couple of years in a row. I did the Hinterland Straits
Yes.
collection,
Yeah.
and that was with a group of local designers each time.
Cool.
Some of them were the same, and some of them were different.
Yeah.
And it it was awesome that put together this collection, and um, you know, I would try and have like a few garments and an accessory, and
Mhm.
all the different kind of boxes checked.
Yeah.
It was mostly for Knit City,
Oh, right.
Vancouver. Have you ever been to that?
I haven't. I've tried to figure out ways of getting myself there, and then this past year I was looking at coming and vending, because the my most recent book, Fetsco, was with Yoth Yarns, and so I was like, well, I know that um, I know that Paula at Bad Anna's carries them, and like the West Coast is basically the only place that you can get Yoth yarns in person. Like they don't really exist otherwise unless you're ordering them online. And so I went and looked at the cost, and like I realized that Knit City is huge, but like our biggest table at Manitoba Fiber Fest costs $150, and I went and I looked at the cost of a table at Knit City, and it was like $600 for one of the small ones. I was like, oh, okay, and then I'll have to fly out there. Maybe I won't do that this year. So I mean, I would love to get out there at some point, and at the very least, I want to come out and actually like attend.
Yeah.
Um, but trying to figure out, like, I have places that I can crash in Vancouver, so it's not so much the accommodations, but the like
It is a commitment to do
yeah,
it, and
yeah,
like for this year I am actually sharing with a couple of people.
nice. That seems to
I
be the way that works really well for people is like you split the
Yeah,
cost, and then you've got really beautiful things that complement each other nicely.
yeah. Like I've always shared with the Beehive.
Oh yes,
The Val at the Beehive is a close friend, and
nice.
my husband and I did their rebrand and stuff like that
Oh,
a
sweet.
couple years ago. Um, and so I've gotten to know her quite well. And then when she started doing Knit City and I launched Hinterland, I thought, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just kind of, take a little sliver of her booth and just see how it goes. And that's what I did the first year. I had this like tiny little, basically an L-shaped table.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing. I did so well. So then the next year I took a little bit more space. And then this year I'm taking a little bit more space again.
Nice.
And then sharing with a couple more people. So
Cool.
it is great also sharing with Val because she's a sponsor, so she gets like a great location every year. So it
Perfect.
obviously benefits me a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. It's like here you've spent $600 and you're like tucked into a little corner, like
Yeah,
in
no,
behind a
it's
bunch
like,
of
oh
things.
great, you're down the hallway in a dark corner where no one goes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it seems like Knit City is just a completely different beast than our Fiber Fest is. And I think that they're kind of meant to be different beasts. Like Knit City really does seem to be more along the lines of like when I lived in the UK, I was working for a yarn shop, Nest, and we did the knitting show at Alexandra Palace, I think is where it's at. And it's also like basically a trade show. Like Selvage magazine is there, and Malabrigo shows up, and it's just like a huge gong show.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it is crazy. My mom helped me this past year,
yeah.
and I'm like, Mom, be prepared. I'm like, because she's like, well, maybe we should get a couple of chairs. I'm like, you're not sitting down, trust me. I'm like, there won't be room to have a chair, or it's like you will see. And sure enough, by the end of the day, my mom was just like, oh my god, where can we go to get some wine?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, and then like you try and sit down and you realize it's just never gonna, like if you sit down, you're never getting back up.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I do definitely want to try and get out there. And we've now timed ourselves, thanks to Anna knowing when Knit City is going to do their things. Then, like, when we're timing stuff, we're like, okay, we'll make sure that Fiberfest doesn't overlap with Knit City because we were doing that for a few years, just like totally by accident because they both happen in the fall. And it's like, oh, that's the best convenient weekend. So now we've pushed our festival a couple of weeks earlier, so that if we want to go, then we can go.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it would be fun to just like come walk around.
yeah, I think my social anxiety would probably, although I feel like at the thing with like knitting shows is that a lot of people have social anxiety there, so it's a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah. And it's like the one place you go where, it's totally okay to like just touch other people's clothing. Like,
True.
like walk
This
up
is
to
lovely.
strangers and be like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. And you're like, holding the end of their sweater or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Casually petting their shoulder.
Totally. It's pretty funny.
Amazing.
Crossing all sorts of social boundaries.
Yeah. But it's okay. Oh, that's so cool. So, okay, so I'm so excited about this fingering yarn, fingering weight yarn. It's like now stuck in my head. Um, is there like how else do you want to be growing? What else do you want to be doing with Hinterland?
Well, I just started. I started making some duvets and pillows,
Ooh.
which um, were definitely like. Well, I had been saving all of the kind of junk fiber.
Hmm.
It's like the legs and necks, like stuff that it's too short to make yarn with, and it's like the leg fiber is quite coarse actually.
Yeah.
Even like on the belly, some of the bellies are salvageable for to put in with like legs and necks and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I had been accumulating tons and tons of this fiber because I didn't want to throw it away. Most people throw it out,
Hmm.
um, and I ended up uh, deciding to get some duvets and pillows made just to like see how they are.
Yeah.
So it was like a bit tough because I was, it's a big investment to take something that would normally be a throwaway thing
Yeah.
and like turn it into like a high price item,
Yeah, that's true.
So that was kind of that definitely took me a while to like try, and I did okay with it, but I am going to get more made. I only have 2 duvets left now, so
Amazing. So they're selling though.
yeah, they're selling, but just like definitely slower than I had hoped.
Right.
But I think it's okay. Like it's just something, again, like I haven't really been marketing it at all. Like I don't,
Hmm.
it was one of those things where I wasn't really sure how. I have been spending a lot of time thinking about it, and is selling like marketing a duvet is kind of tricky because if you, um, you know, photograph it with a cover on, and people will think that maybe it comes with a cover on, and
Yeah, that's
so
true.
they'll make covers. So that's kind of where I'm going now. Is maybe I'll make some covers and see if that helps, but I'm not sure. But it's still a good product for me to make because I'm doing something with fiber that I would normally throw away,
Right.
or and 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 taking it from other farms when we share other animals, we'll take that as well. So
Cool.
it's just turning something into a usable item.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
So that's one direction that I'd like to go is starting to make stuff like that, or just continuing to make stuff like that.
mhm.
But then also I do natural dyeing as well,
Yes.
and that's something that like I do for fun. I took a group of people to Oaxaca a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago now, maybe a year and a half ago, and it was so much fun. And it was a 10-day natural dye trip that it was everything like all included kind of thing. And it was so much fun. The people had a total blast. It was so much work though for me,
Yeah.
and that was the one thing that I just have to do it. The first time is always the hardest.
Right. Yeah.
You know, learn as you go, and thankfully nothing bad happened. No, everyone had a great time, and
Right.
I had great feedback and everything. But so I think that's another direction that I'd like to go is to continue to do um, dye workshops and retreats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'd like to do the Oaxaca one again, and also maybe see if I can do some out here.
Yeah. I think that would be super cool. I remember seeing when you were doing the Oaxaca one and like wishing that I could afford to go. But I can imagine just like the logistics of organizing something like that would
Yeah,
be
it, when you're
crazy.
not there, it's like well,
Yeah.
I ended up going there a month before, or maybe 6 weeks or something before, because I'm like, I just need to like walk the retreat like on my own,
Totally.
see if everything makes sense, and I've been to Oaxaca quite a few times and spent a lot of time there,
Hmm.
and I do know a lot of people there, so I was relying a lot on just other people saying that they were going to be there for me.
Right.
But then, you know, it's I don't. I guess I'm maybe a little bit of a over planner in a way. I just wanted to like be like sure that like everything, all the T's were crossed and I's are dotted and everything
Yeah.
like that.
I would totally be the same way. Like you just, especially where you're not actually like there and holding everything right before people show up. Like
Yeah.
I would definitely be the same of like, oh, I need to just make sure that everything is ready so that I'm not terrified of when we land. Like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And actually, I did end up changing some things. I was glad that I
mhm,
went down because I went to one place that I realized wasn't really suitable to bring a group.
right,
Mm. Because all of the different places we went were like people's houses.
right, of course.
This one place we went was like so small, and there was like two chairs, and like, oh, I don't know, this isn't going to really work. Like, no indoor space like, to sit. So
Right, yeah.
I ended up, and then plus I got bit by a fire ant while I was there, which didn't help.
What? They're evil.
They are evil. It crawled up my pants.
Oh my God.
And, and then another one, oh, another one, I was going to go into the mountains and bring people to this beautiful village where they spin and weave with silk.
Oh, amazing.
It's like the only place in Oaxaca that it's in. It's in the mountains called San Pedro Cojones.
Hmm.
If you ever get to go, it's definitely well worth it.
Okay.
But it's a long journey. It was like 3 hours each way on a bus kind of thing,
Okay.
and I'm like, ugh.
People might not be okay with that. I mean, I would be okay with that, but I think you'd be like a pretty specific group of people. Maybe if you
Yeah,
knew which people were coming, like, then
yeah, and
sure.
it was, and that was kind of it. I was like, when I realized all of the people that signed up, like, most people are retired,
Yeah,
you know, so it wasn't really the journey that I think a lot of them would have been up for.
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and just even like bathroom breaks and lunch breaks and just like basics.
Yeah.
So it'd be different if it was like a group of younger people who had lots of experience traveling, staying in hostels, and like we're okay with a bit of rough and tumble
Yeah, totally. Like,
Mexican
just pull off to the side of the road and
bathroom
we'll
break.
pop a squat in the ditch.
Yeah, totally. Mm.
Ugh, that's so
Those are the
funny.
only things that I changed, and then I added one other thing. So it ended up being I felt so much better after I did that, but
Mhm.
um, like went down and did the walkthrough. So I think I would like to do it again, and I've got everything lined up, so it
Yeah,
would be certainly more easier.
that would be lovely. So, how long have you been dying then?
For since I started Hinterland,
Cool.
um, and actually I learned in Oaxaca. I did an artist residency there.
Amazing.
I'm trying to remember when, maybe like 3 or probably 4 years ago. It was when I first started the yarns as well. So yeah, maybe like 4 years ago.
Everything just
And
kind of all happened at the same time.
yeah, and I was doing an artist residency, and I met up with this natural dyer there,
Hmm.
and it was awesome. And it actually, and I had because I was constantly trying to sign up for natural dye workshops in Vancouver,
Hmm.
and they just sell out so fast.
Yeah.
At
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
the people that get to sign up for those classes, man, they must be like on redial or something. I'm not sure, or just like stand in lineup for hours and
I
hours.
know it's kind of terrifying. The email comes out from them, and like I never actually have to worry about it because I'm too far away to worry about it. But it's like, and the class catalog is gone out, and everything is sold out already, and
I
you're
know,
like,
like
how did
20
this
things.
happen?
I know. Like, okay, well, and so I tried to do that for a couple of years, and just with no luck.
Hmm.
And and then yeah, at the time, I think now they offer more classes, but at the time, I think they were just doing it once a year.
Yeah.
And so then I started looking elsewhere, and then that's when I found this residency in Oaxaca, and I was like, I could use something that I could, some time away that I can, think about what I want to do, and yeah,
Hmm.
because I've kind of been in flux for a little while, like changing careers and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it was a good time for me.
Nice.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so cool. Um, it's so funny. It's been really interesting. Like as I've started to work more with farm yarns, um, like, and I guess I think it'll be a little bit different once I start working with mill yarns instead of specifically farm yarns. Because on the one hand, I love the idea of using especially forage dyes from here and over dyeing stuff. But whenever I've got a farm yarn, I'm like, this is a fleece specific yarn. Like, I don't want to change the color of this fleece. It's just
Yeah.
it's so special. Like this gray is just perfect. And I know that it's a mix of things, but I'm like, I wouldn't actually want to over dye it. Like that seems like a
I
waste
know
to
I
me.
always have plans to like over dye some of my colors, and I never do.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, the other colors, I was like, oh, this would look, the truffle would look so good, and like, an indigo vat or madder
Oh,
root or something like that. Like it would be so beautiful,
yes.
and I'm sure it would, but I never. I'm like too chicken to do it or something.
Maybe you just need to like hold a skein back from each thing. I actually just ordered. I've been trying to put myself on a yarn diet this year, and then you just told me about fingering weight yarn, so that's going out the window. But I also just ordered yarn from Isolda's online shop because she has a whole bunch of European yarns, but they're
Mm,
like, it's Isolda, so it's like different, like proper wools. And
yeah.
so this yarn that I ordered, what is it called? I think it's called Circle Stitches or something like that. I'll find it. But they use yarn from where she is in, I think she's in the Highlands. And the sheep that they use, it's a farm that provides the wool, and they have white. Oh, it's because it's Jacob wool. And so they have the dark and they have the light from the fleeces. And so what they've actually done is they have a rainbow of colors, like it's just they cover the rainbow. And so they will dye on the light wool and then also on the dark wool. And so you get, it's the exact same dye, but because of the way that it over dyes on the different shades, then you get these completely different results, and it's just so beautiful. Like I especially on the gray wools, just like seeing the way that it over dyes. I
Mm,
I mean, I'm waiting on the yarn, so I don't know what it looks like in person yet, but just the photos are so incredible. And I just think, and actually when I was in Iceland and visiting with Gudrun at her studio for Hespa, then most of her yarns she dyes on a white yarn, but she does have some gray. And I bought some stuff that she had taken lichen and is it lichen? I think lichen. And she'd over dyed on this gray, and it just creates the most amazing texture because of the way, like you almost get like that natural marled look
mm,
because the different shades of the darker fibers take the dyes in a way that is just there's so much more depth than if you're just dyeing on the white.
mhm.
It's really fun and nerdy. um, so okay, we've been talking for so long, and I'm so happy.
I know you're
uh,
gonna have a lot to edit out, I think.
I know, it's fine. I might just leave it. I realized that I'm editing the Fleece and Harmony one, and it's like a 2 hour conversation, and I think I'm going to be able to pull out like maybe half an hour of it. People can just listen for forever. Because then it's like, it's also that awkward thing. Like, I personally am a fan of awkward conversations because that's kind of the only conversations that I have. But it's also one of those things where, like, if you're trying to edit out, especially in videos, like, if you're like jumping too far, it's like, I'll remove these like 10 seconds. And then you realize, like, oh, the jump between the 10 seconds is actually worse than just leaving the 10 seconds in. Like, just don't worry about it. That could also just be me being really lazy with technology, but I don't care. um, so, okay. So, what do you think is an easy way for people to engage with the fiber shed besides just buying your yarn?
Hmm. An easy way to engage. Well, that's I would say definitely looking online at like a resource like what you guys are doing.
Hmm.
That would be um, a great way. Or even I bet even if you sign up for like the hand weavers and spinners or something like that
Oh, that's
in your
true.
area, like there are lots of like in ours here, there are lots of people that if they don't have sheep, they know people that do, kind of thing.
Right.
That would be an area, but yeah, because a lot of yarn shops won't carry small farm yarns, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe yeah, I think the online resource would probably be the best.
Cool. That makes sense. Perfect. I will link to a few of them in the notes for this. So, okay, well then, why don't we give people a slight break and, in theory, wrap up the conversation for them at least. And so, in your ideal world, what does the fiber shed look like for you?
Like my own, or just
It can either be your specific fiber shed, like your personal fiber shed, or it could be the fiber shed across the world, like whatever fiber shed means for you. What does it look like?
I think just having well, one thing that I really like what's going on right now is that there is the trend. Maybe that's not the best word to use, but um, for people, knitters and weavers, to source local fiber
Mhm.
and be using local fiber and be telling those stories. So I would just say that I think just the continued growth of that kind of trajectory of people really caring about where their things are coming from, the stories attached to the things that they're making, and to being able to tell that you know that whole story that comes back to the land, and that's something that's really important to me, and really the reason why I got into this in the first place was so that I knew um, from being able to make clothing for myself and for my family and friends
Mhm.
that I know exactly where these animals live and how they're cared for, and that they're happy little creatures, and that's like it's maybe cheesy, but that's was something that was really important to me when I started.
Mhm.
And I really didn't start it to be a commercial thing. I started as like a small thing that I only had 6 animals, like how
Right.
much yarn can you actually make with that amount? But it's like really grown into something that is very different than what I originally visioned for it.
Mhm.
And I'm really happy with where it's going, and I would love to continue it. Um, you know, and I guess maybe that's my answer, is just having like the continued growth and people supporting local and really caring about it and um, caring about farms and agriculture in general.
Cool. That's perfect. Thank you.